You know, if an alien spaceship crash landed in my back garden and there was a baby inside of it, I ain't taking that thing in. That baby is going one of two places. Either straight to the police, or I'm throwing it in a dump. can't, I can't say that. I can't say that I'm gonna willingly throw a baby in a dump. Oh my god! How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Luke's Reviews, and on today's video I'll be reviewing a slightly darker take on a superhero origin story that we're slightly familiar with, kind of sharing similarities with Superman. But it's not Superman, okay? It's definitely not Superman. I am, of course, talking about Brightburn, which is produced by James Gunn. It's not directed or written by him, which I think a lot of people are immediately assuming. It is, in fact, directed by David Yarovesky, who, when I looked up his directing credits, I was completely unfamiliar with his work, obviously, up until now. One thing I did notice, though, is that he directed the Guardians Inferno music video, the song from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 that has David Hasselhoff singing. I guess. Brightburn also stars Elizabeth Banks, David Denman, and Jackson A. Dunn as the sinister Brandon Breyer. Ugh, does that name fill you with fear, Brandon? The premise of Brightburn is simple. Take the origin story of Superman, except he's not Superman, and flip it on its head. His spaceship crash lands on Earth in a farm, and a young couple take him in and raise him as their own child. But as he grows older, though, he begins to develop strange powers, and rather use them for good, Brandon begins wreaking havoc and causing chaos in the small town of Brightburn. I kind of went in with moderate expectations for Brightburn. Conceptually, this premise is awesome. It has so much potential. Obviously, Hollywood nowadays is crammed with superhero films, so it is nice to see an origin story that we're slightly familiar with, but completely turn it on its head and completely pick it apart and flip our expectations. However, the trailers themselves, they didn't really impress me, and I was slightly worried because James Gunn, whilst an amazing writer and director, there have been a couple of films that he's lent producer credits to that I haven't been too much of a fan of. For example, we had the Belko Experiment a couple years ago, and I felt like that completely missed the mark. But thankfully, I walked out of Brightburn fairly satisfied. It's nothing groundbreaking, it's not going to revolutionise the entire genre, it's just a fairly simple, straightforward horror thriller with a superpowered character at its core. At a very crisp 90 minutes, Brightburn speeds along at a very tight pace, and that's often really good. There's rarely ever a time when I was bored. However, I think in terms of setting up development, of which this film doesn't really have that much of, I feel like an extra 10 minutes could have been added onto the beginning just to help set the stage of who these characters are, the relationships, Brandon sort of struggling through school a little more, because I find that certain moments causing his eventual snap and his discovery of his true self, I feel like they were rushed through, and I wouldn't have minded 10 minutes to just really flesh everything out. The actors all do a reasonably good job. Jackson A. Dunn, I think, is incredibly impressive as Brandon, especially when he has to hit those really sinister moments. I do think his line delivery was a little sketchy in some places, specifically when he's threatening someone. A lot of his delivery would be pausing at every other word to create dramatic effect. And I didn't mind the fact that he did that occasionally because it just adds to his overall sinister presence, but he does it all the time, and I'm thinking, make it snappier. And I thought David Denman was pretty good as the conflicted father who's obviously wanting to love his son even though it's not his son, and he wants to defend him even though it's quite clear that this dude is going around like completely ripping jaws out their sockets. I like the family drama that was presented. I didn't expect it to be as front and centre as it actually was, but they do ask some intriguing questions, especially in regards to how parents cope with puberty. Obviously, this kid is suffering a lot more than most kids do at puberty. As for Elizabeth Banks, she was okay. She screams and wails a lot in this film. But she does this constant thing of whenever she's either telling off Brandon or explaining something about Brandon, she will constantly do this thing. Brandon! 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 I just felt like it was a little bit too much. The violence is very extreme, but it's handled quite well. Don't get me wrong, this certainly earns its 15A certificate because the violence is... it gets graphic. It gets incredibly graphic, but it's not like the Belko experiment where I thought it was done in poor taste and often completely unnecessary. This serves a point. Tension is there in some scenes, but unfortunately they're occasionally spoilt by... jump scares! And that does lead into my general complaint with Brightburn, is that it is disappointingly predictable. There's no major surprises, there's no big third act twist. Even if you've seen the trailer, you kind of know how this movie's going to play out from beginning, middle, and end. It left me feeling satisfied when I left, but not really fulfilled. All in all, there are so many worse films you could see in cinemas than Brightburn. X-Men. If you're after an incredibly simple, violent, supervillain thriller, then you'll probably enjoy Brightburn. If you're after anything more than that, then I don't think this film is really for you. Overall, I'm going to give Brightburn a 6 out of 10. Anyway guys, those are my thoughts on Brightburn. If you've seen the film already, let me know what you thought in the comments below, as well as what superhero you would like to see have a villainous twist. For me, I'm going to say Spider-Man, because he's known as sort of like the do-gooder, the happy-go-lucky kid. I want to see him kill some people. That's dark. That is really dark. If you have enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. The links to all of my social media are in the description below. Many thanks for watching guys, and I shall see you in the next video.